Let us now turn to our expert panel, who will lead us through a discussion on how a focus on gender can lead to positive systemic change. To set the scene for today's dialogue, we have Dr. Jemima Njuki, custodian of the Gender Equality and Women's Empowerment Change Lever of the Food Systems Summit. She is a renowned and determined advocate for women. Dr. Njuki will explore how gender issues impact our food systems with two other leaders, Her Excellency Alexandra Bugaliskas, Ambassador of Canada to FAO, WFP, and EFAD, as well as Mr. Edward Wageni, the global head of the He for She initiative at UN Women. Our eminent panelists are both at the forefront of gender issues on the world stage, and we could not be more fortunate to have them frame today's discussion and provide us with kernels of ideas we can then bring into our smaller group discussions. Jemima, please take it away.
Thank you so much, Rick, for that excellent introduction to the panel. It's great to be here in this important conversation on gender and food systems. Ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, welcome. I first want to talk about what I call this two-way relationship between food systems, food and nutrition security, and gender equality. First, we have ample evidence that countries with the highest gender inequalities also tend to be more food insecure. Given the critical roles that women play in food systems as producers, as processors, as traders, as consumers, as scientists, the denial of their rights to resources, to information, to technologies, and to their advancement has a detrimental effect on their own nutrition, the nutrition of their families, their communities, and for whole nations. But second, we also see that the way our food systems are organized has built a lot of inequalities that we need to address. Women, for example, are often found in less lucrative parts of value chains, are more likely to be in informal work, and some groups, including women, adolescent girls, and boys, are more likely to suffer chronic food insecurity. And we need to change this. And as the gender lever of the UN Food Systems Summit, we are working with action track leaders. We are working with others to develop propositions and solutions of actions to address gender inequalities in the food systems. And I have to commend the leadership of the UN Food Systems Summit for actually making sure that gender equality and the empowerment of women has been central to the conversation on food systems transformation. Because we cannot transform our food systems to deliver on the outcomes they're supposed to deliver without addressing gender equality and the empowerment of women. For example, we are working on a global food 50-50 initiative that is very critical, both for global organizations, national organizations, private sector organizations that are working in food systems to ensure commitment and accountability for gender equality in three key areas. One, in leadership and voice for women and other underrepresented groups. Policies, including equal pay for all food system workers, and also programs to ensure that their programs are gender responsive, are gender transformative, and address the needs and priorities of women. We are calling on governments to have food system policies that are transformative and feminist. And I'm so excited to have Her Excellency the Ambassador as part of this panel. We are calling on governments to adopt gender responsive budgeting in food systems so that we ensure that resources in food systems are actually going to where they are meant to be, where they have the greatest impacts on women. These are only two examples of some of the propositions we are working with. We are working on closing the gender financing gaps, on women's economic empowerment, on the need for gender data, on engaging men and boys. And I was really excited to see Edward Wageni as part of this panel, but also working with cultural right holders so that they can be part and parcel of the solution to gender inequality. The conversation we are having here today is going to contribute to some of these propositions that we really need, that we urgently need to transform our food systems so that they are not just sustainable. They don't just provide healthy and nutritious foods, but they are also just and equitable. So welcome to my panel. Her Excellency Alexandra Bugalaskis, the Ambassador of Canada to FAO, WFP, and IFAD. It's great to see you again, Your Excellency. And I'll start with you because Canada is one of the first countries that adopted a feminist international assistance policy. And you, as you have heard, one of the things we would like to do is actually call on other governments to adopt policies that are feminist, that are gender transformative in relation to food systems. Could you tell us more about this policy and some of the initiatives that Canada has been able to implement as a result of this policy? Over to you, Your Excellency.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Njuki, and it's really lovely to see you again. I love coming out for CFS events because they bring together the best people and they address some of the most important topics, and today's is one of them, definitely. So thank you for asking me. Yes, in 2017, Canada adopted a feminist international assistance policy. I have to tell you, I was back in Ottawa in those days, and none of us was exactly sure what this meant, but we sure know what it means now. We interviewed about 15,000 people, including a lot in the developing world, and about 65 different countries. We adopted a feminist lens because, as many speakers have said, we realized that promoting gender equality and empowering women and girls was not only a fundamental human right, but it was the most effective approach to reduce poverty, to build more peaceful, more inclusive, and more prosperous world, and to achieve, of course, the SDGs. We knew that by eliminating barriers to equality and helping to create better opportunities, women and girls could be incredibly powerful agents of change and to improve not only their own lives, but those of their families and, of course, of their communities. So it's been almost 5 years now. This policy has guided our investments in development. And I have to say, having two incredible female ministers of development who made this very certain that we had to be consistent and ruthless and ensure that it was cross-cutting. Some of the results, of course, we were looking at locally led agricultural businesses, more equal access to capital, you've mentioned that, to markets, to digital technology, functional literacy, financial education. Women really lack, I think, and we'll talk about that more maybe in the breakout room. And as you said, the importance of working with men to bring about those changes in attitudes and behavior and roles, and for them to recognize that it was in their interests, many of them being, of course, owners of companies, when they find how hard women work. I wanted to mention COVID-19 because I think that has really exposed the existing inequalities. Unfortunately, so many of the advances we've made were laid bare by the impact, but it was obvious that it was going to affect them, that the economic shocks would really affect women and girls first, both in the very basic food security, but also, of course, with regards to jobs. Unfortunately, women have been 3 times more likely to lose their jobs. Why? Because they're the care workers, right? The unpaid care workers and the paid care workers, but mostly unpaid, and now having to be teachers at home. So they've been on the front line of the crisis. 75% of healthcare workforce in many countries is women, but as I said, oftentimes they are having to stay at home and are the first victims of a pandemic or a crisis. So COVID has shown us that we need to really do more to fill that gap. Not only do women's lives matter, but they're also critical to our efforts to create food security, climate sustainability. So I wanted to bring 2 examples. Canada's intersectional feminist approach prioritizes women's voices in leadership as an accelerator of change. And this includes working with local organizations to advance women's rights. An example is the Equality Fund. This is a Canadian initiative that mobilized unprecedented funds for gender equality. The Equality Fund is unique and a first-of-its-kind platform that brings together government, philanthropic, and private sector organizations, as well as civil society actors, to provide funding for grassroots women's organizations. This is, I think, the key element of change. Another example I would share is how Canada supports women in agriculture, mainly again by promoting gender transformative investments in smallholder women farmers. We know that women are incredible contributors to agricultural production. They can actively contribute to improving food security and mitigating climate change. But because of gender inequalities, their opportunities are limited. They face many barriers, social norms, a lack of access to financial resources, property rights, market, education. That's why it's so important to create the enabling environment through these gender transformative investments. We address the underlying causes of gender inequality and promote community-led changes towards shared decision-making and control of resources. So providing female farmers with equal access to resources is estimated that it could reduce chronic hunger by 17%. So we have to leverage the momentum around the world, and the UN Summit on Food Systems is going to be a key element. I know so many of my colleagues online today have really been ensuring that this is a cross-cutting focus and priority for the UNFSS. And I'm really looking forward to hearing more game-changing solutions as we break out into the breakout rooms. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Your Excellency, and for bringing out some of those critical issues that we hope to further the conversation on women's voices and leadership, funding for grassroots organizations, because if we don't start from the bottom up, by hearing the voices of women, by hearing the voices of grassroots organizations, then we will not go far. I'm going to turn to you very quickly, Edward. So very often when we talk about gender equality, there's been a tendency to focus on women, and for a good measure, because they suffer a lot of the inequalities we are talking about. But we know there's a critical role for men to play in terms of achieving gender equality. Could you tell us how the He for She initiative is contributing to this?
Thank you very much, Jemima, for having me and for this question that you've asked. I'm not going to make any assumptions that everybody knows what He for She is, so maybe a bit of context is important. He for She is a creation of UN Women, which is the UN entity for promoting gender equality and empowerment of women. And before the creation of He for She, there was a clear realization that even as UN Women was set up and looking at all the strategic aims that it has, there was kind of an implicit message that this is about addressing issues to do with women. But the reality is that gender equality is not just about women and girls, it's also about men and boys as well. And so that led to the creation of a He for She, recognizing that gender equality is about everybody, including people of all genders, and it requires everybody to be on the table or wherever they are to promote gender equality. So that led to the creation of a He for She. And also part of that was also the recognition that we are so far away from achieving gender equality. As we sit here, in this forum, no country has achieved gender equality. There are those that have way ahead, like in the Nordic countries, like Iceland, and others that are lagging behind. So recognizing that we also then, given that it's about everybody's business and that we're so far away from achieving gender equality, we also need to put in measure work in a different way. And so the creation of He for She was also about doing things differently and accelerating change. So He for She was created about 5 years ago, and one of the things that it did was to bring powerful men on the table, recognizing, as everybody in this forum knows, that men hold powerful positions. If you look at the political arena, if you look at the big corporate world, if you look at at the community level, men hold powerful positions. And so what UN Women did, and He for She, was to invite men who have the influence and the resources to be able to make commitments that would bring about change. So out of that, we have heads of state that have made commitments that have, that they have been reporting on. We have the private sector, and Danone is one of our partners who have made commitments that they have been working on. And we have academic institutions and other players that, are invited to the journey and have been working, to promote gender equality. One of the things to say, which is also pretty important, is that bringing men on board was also then recognizing that they're not coming to ground zero. It's also recognizing that actually women and women movements have been doing a lot of work. So the invitation of men was actually to come and contribute and building on the success that has already been put in place by by women and women's movement. So coming to your question, Jemima, on what he or she has been doing, we have been looking at how we can, all the actors and the partners that I've highlighted, looking at concrete commitments that they can report on, that they feel that they would want to be held accountable. And that is very much, the top-down kind of what we call as the top-down solutions. But across the world, the message on he for she has inspired many people and resonated with the people in their own context and identified things that they can actually do in their own context, whether you're talking about gender-based violence or whether you're talking about issues of reproductive health, whether you're talking about education. And some of these issues are very important in this discussion.